Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate it. Okay, next, JB, take us away, please.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Matt, that was amazing. For anybody that thought I was texting while that was going on, they're wrong. I was taking notes on what he was saying because some of those things I really, really enjoyed and we're going to implement in my own training, whether it's with students or teams in my program and that kind of thing. So great job on that. Wanted to echo a couple of things also. Some of our best hitters in our program, I try to keep up with the numbers through our Blast and Blaze Connect portal, and their blast numbers aren't amazing. So, can you go to the next slide? Because this is going to kind of tie into, actually the next one too. We'll skip over that. That was from last week. But in any event, some of our best hitters also, their numbers aren't super impressive. And, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about last week. And Francesca, you mentioned this, there's a lot of things that go into being a great hitter, and certainly technology and data is a piece of that, but it's really, really important that especially for the younger hitters and the parents out there working with their kids, that you understand it's just a piece. So let's see, I want to start with on mine. Last week I talked about playing, and I think one of the things that's really going to complement what Matt was doing today is that I am going to really try to speak to a lot of our younger crowd, and especially parents who are helping their kids. We're in a huge remote training atmosphere right now, out of necessity because we have to. And I know our program has a pretty robust remote training deal that we're doing. So for me, it's important that, after this presentation, like I said last week, I want a kid to be able to go out in the garage, work on something maybe that they like that I presented, and see some results immediately. So that's where kind of my focus is going to be. And last week it was on achieving Greem playing scores, and then this week it's going to be on connection. And by the way, I got a lot of people reaching out to me last week asking about connection, so excited that I got to come back and talk about it. So a couple of workflow tips. Well, first let me say this, playing and connection are definitely interrelated when you're looking at it from data as it pertains to blast. If you're working on one, it may change the other, and if you're working on the other, it changes it. So, when it comes to the workflow, what I would suggest is pick one or the other and train to that, and then go to the other one and train to it, and then combine them and try to make them work together. And that's what I'm going to take you through in my video part today. So, and then also, these visual and feel cues that I use, I have found to really work for the kids that I work with. And again, I work with some really young kids who are 8 all the way up to young adults. So a lot of times these simple cues, which may seem silly in a way, are very effective, especially for the young athletes. So, pay attention to some of those cues and try those, or come up with your own. And then lastly on this slide, the role of technology, and Matt already talked a lot about this, but never let the numbers define you, but rather be a part of your learning process. Because like I talked about last week with literal hitters that take everything very literal, the last thing I want to see when I'm running a blast type practice with my team is kids getting overly frustrated because of a number. Because to me, that's not picking the right battle. Let your frustrations motivate you, not be something that makes you feel like you're less hitter than you are. So, with that, I say embrace what frustrates you, because failure is how you're going to grow and get better. And this is super crucial to being the best you can be. So, really make sure that you're focused on that as you're out working on these numbers. Okay, next slide. This is just a quick recap from last week, because this is one of the cues that I used. So again, what we're trying to do on this verbal cue is, and also it's a feel cue for the hitter, is just give them a sense of where we're going to leverage the bat off of the shoulder on this first constraint. And again, I use the laser pointer idea. Imagine that there's a laser pointer shooting out of the bat, and we're changing the direction in which that laser is shooting. Okay, we can go ahead and go to the next one. All right, so we're going to get straight into the video here. And so we're going to start off with having Riley just swing super steep. You can see right here that she has a really low connection number. And so now it's going to be starting to make adjustments. Actually, on this first one, I told her to over tilt because she has a tendency in her, when her numbers are down, she tilts a little bit too much. So I had her over tilt on purpose because I wanted you guys to see her make an adjustment after this. So you can notice that she still was in yellow there. So now's where she's going to use some of those cues. Can you pause it real quick? So the cue that she used, just so you guys know, in her adjustment was tilting less at the pelvis. So just having her be a little bit more upright and not tilt quite as much. And then for her, trying the way that her body moves, trying to get her knob to be a little bit flatter as she begins, because she tends to get really vertical and she tends to over tilt sometimes when she's in games and stuff like that. So that was her particular adjustment there. You can go ahead and start it back. And you can see she went to green there. And like I talked about last week, we don't have time to run through all this, but I think when you're working this process, you got to make it repeatable. So challenge your hitter to be able to make that adjustment and repeat it 3 times in a row. I kind of sped this up to get to that. So now we're going to take away a constraint. Can you pause it real quick? Because I ran past my constraints. I need to bring that back up. The 2 constraints I'm using in this process is going to be, one, taking the stride out of the swing, so that we can kind of minimize the movement between the lower and the upper half. And then the other constraint that we're using, and if you watched last week, these are the same constraints. We are putting the barrel on the shoulder, and we're using the pointer idea to change in how the vertical angle of the bat early in the swing. So those are the 2 constraints, and the idea is we're going to use constraints, get the numbers up, and then we're going to pull the constraints out. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll it again. So now she's not allowing a stride here, but she is taking her hands up off her shoulder, so she's releasing that restraint. And you'll see I kept a lot of the stuff that happened to be a green score there, but I'm going to keep a lot of the stuff where she has to adjust. So I reiterated here, maybe over tilting, so you guys can see how it affects that number. So for her, it dropped it back down, which is still a decent number. But right here, she's going to make her adjustment, less tilt, and now her laser pointer is going to the catcher's mask. And that's going to put her back in the numbers that she's trying to achieve. And then, so now we're going to take another constraint away. We're going to allow her to go ahead and stride. But one of the things I love using, I talked about this last week, is a slow stride, because it really allows the hitter to kind of feel what their body is doing as they're getting their lower half involved. Now you can see she struggled there on that first number, so now she's going to make her adjustment. And she's done this enough to kind of know what that adjustment is. But I think it's awesome as a coach or a parent, you know, watching your kids make their own adjustments and trying to figure this stuff out. And it's all by feel, you know, and just some visual cues in this situation. So there was her normal swing. You can see that she's failed on that as far as what her goal was. So now she's going to make her adjustment. Again, her adjustments a lot of the time is the same. It's trying to be a little bit more upright. And you can see there that she made the correct adjustment. So now we're going to have to put the 2 scores together. So what you'll see here is I changed the data on there. Can you pause it real quick? And maybe if you want, rewind it. Yeah, just back to that. So now what we're doing is we've gone through, you know, we went through playing last week. We just did connection. So now we're going to put those together. And, you know, I'm just going to tell you straight up, unless your kid is already naturally good at these metrics, this one becomes incredibly frustrating because you get one going and the other one's not right, and then you just go back and forth, and it can be really, really frustrating, but it also can be, you know, a fun challenge if you help make it. So this is us kind of working through that process of keeping both the plane and connection score above 60. And you can notice that I changed the iPad readout to have plane connection and attack angle. I'm not talking about attack angle today because I could spend a whole nother hour just on that and where she struggles on this sometimes, but we are trying to get those 2 greens to happen. Okay, you can roll it. So she's back to her constraints. We're gonna go from ground, you know, start from where we started with our constraints. The barrel's on the shoulder, no stride. In that particular one, she did hit 2 greens. So again, if she was working out on this right now, we'd want her to be able to make that repeatable. Now we're going to take a constraint away and let her get her hands and put them where she wants them. And you can see that it dipped down to yellow again. So the yellow, but she had green connection. So now she's got to try to feel what it takes here. And again, it's always going to be a play. Can we pause it real quick? When you're trying to figure out these adjustments, it's always going to be a play between the amount of tilt that you use and then the amount of where the bat angle is. So you got to remember that, and we're going to look at this in the 3D analysis, but you can achieve a steeper bat angle two ways. You could very simply do this, but you could also do this. So it's always going to be a play between the amount of tilt and the amount of bat tip or bat angle that you create early in the swing. So you have to really find that sweet spot and work those numbers. Okay, you can roll it. Okay, so she's trying to get 2 greens. It looks like she did there. So now we're going to take another constraint away. We're going to put her in the slow stride again so she can focus on feeling the lower half and look to see what we get. So again, you can see her playing score wasn't great there. So again, she's going to have to try to figure it out here, and she's going to try to get her knob a little bit higher as she strides out. That's typically her adjustment. And everybody's different, right? So there's her double green score. And can you stop it here? So I wanted to show you guys this. I wanted you to see the adjustment that she just made between 2 swings. If you look on the left, this was her as her foot was getting down, but what you can see is the one on the left is a steeper angle at that part of the swing. Now we're talking about, you know, very minute changes here, but I'm sure as all of y'all know from using Blast, the smallest change can affect the numbers greatly, right? So if you notice on the left, she's a little steeper at this part of her swing. You can see the gap between the barrel and the head, and then you can also see that her hands are basically in the exact same place. I use the graphics behind her a lot to do this, so you can notice I use that Blast banner. You can see the knob of the barrel is roughly in the same place, but the barrel is definitely off of her head more, which means it has more vertical angle right there. So the adjustment that she makes on the one on the right is she flattens the barrel a little bit as she's striding, and that flattening of that barrel is what allows her to get her playing score up. Okay, so that's just, I want you guys to see that adjustment. Okay, let's pause this real quick. You guys are gonna love this. So when you're trying to get playing and connection to work together, I highly recommend understanding this 3D analysis, because I'm a visual person myself. A lot of my players are very visual, and you know, sometimes just seeing the numbers over there, vertical bat angle, all that, you know, if you're a geek like me, you're really into it. But for other people, it makes more sense if I can just show them how it looks in this picture rather than try to explain the number and how it correlates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down how to kind of look at least the way that I try to teach my kids to look at this 3D graphic. Okay, let's go ahead and spin it. So on that particular one, she had a yellow playing score. Let's go ahead and pause it right here. So she had a yellow playing score and she had a green connection score. So when you're looking at this, there are 2 arrows. Those arrows are exactly at the same angle, meaning I put and copy and pasted them. So if you look at the arrow on the top, you'll notice that the right side of the top of the arrow is right up against the black line, which that black line, for those of you who may not know, represents where the barrel is when it starts its downward path. So if you look at that arrow and then you look at the arrow below it, how it relates to the line where the barrel makes contact with the ball, you'll notice that the line on the bottom is no longer parallel. So what that means is the line on the bottom when she made contact is not parallel with the line on the top. You can see that the line on the top actually is slanted more downward instead of being parallel. So that's why even though her playing score is good, it's not above green. If she could get those 2 lines to be a little more parallel, then she's going to get a double green. I mean, she's going to get a green score. So for her, it all goes back to her adjustments. She's going to need to either lift the barrel knob and point her laser a little higher to create parallel, or she may need to tilt a little bit less. She tends to tilt quite a bit. I try to keep her in the 30s, but a lot of times she gets into the 40s. So if she tilts a little less, it can help as well. All right, let's go ahead and spin it, and then we'll stop it when you see the 3 red arrows on their part. We're going to stop it right there. So now we're looking at how connection plays into this. So these arrows aren't necessarily laid out in any way that's gonna that determines the angles. I just have them basically pointing at 3 spots. So the arrows on the top, the 2 on the top, are representing again where the barrel starts versus the axis of tilt of the body. And you're trying to create that 90 degrees in between those two. And if you just kind of look at them visually, you can see that the arrow on the left and the top right, they're a little bit squeezed in, so they're a little bit less than 90. And then if you look at the one on the bottom, you can also see that those are actually look almost like a perfect 90 degrees. If you look at them, they look really, really close. As a matter of fact, it's 88 degrees. So it's, you know, the eye can't really see much difference there. But it's a good way for you to start to understand if you're doing this, where it's going wrong. Okay, let's go ahead and spin it. And we can see a couple adjustments here. Okay, so again, there's a double yellow there. You can see, if you pause this real quick here, I'll make this one quicker because I feel like everybody should be kind of catching on. And obviously that's the cool thing about this being on demand. You guys can go back if it's kind of like, you know, if it's not quite registering right now. But notice on the white arrows, again, those 2 black lines that are touching the white arrows are obviously not parallel. They're not both touching the arrows. So you can see that she's struggling on her plane score a lot more there. You can also see that the red looks greater than a 90 if you look at the 2 red arrows, and that is the 94. Now that's still not bad, but again, it visually allows you to see where she needs to improve. So here, if she tilts a little bit more on that 31 and takes it in, and she still has the same barrel path, then she may connect perfectly. Or she could take her knob and lift it a little bit to create that 90 on her early connection. Okay.
That's awesome. This is like really great stuff. For time purposes, sorry, what'd you say, JB?
I think we're at the last one after this too, just so you know, because.
Okay, yeah, totally, go for it.
Okay, so here's the double green, and we'll just keep this short and sweet. You'll see that the 2 white arrows match up perfectly with the black lines, and that the 2 red arrows look like a 90-degree angle. And so there's the double green that we were shooting for in this particular analysis of the 3D. So I would highly recommend using the 3D analysis to look at how the play between plane and connection work. And that's it on my video.
Thank you so much. Sorry I interrupted. I didn't mean to. I mean, I did mean to, but like not really meaning to. Thank you so much for sharing those drills. I really love how you're honestly, like, you're incorporating glass by trying to get these players to understand their feel. Like, that's so hard right now, I feel like, for players to understand how to feel their swing and how to feel their adjustments. And what you're doing is not just trying to adhere to like hitting blast benchmarks and hitting goals, but it's getting these players to understand, hey, that adjustment worked. Remember how that felt? Now replicate it again. And then you have the cues with the metrics to reinforce that it's working. So thank you again so much, JB.
Absolutely.
Jeremy,
really good stuff.
Please
really good.
take us home.